if I go at this pace. On the football pitch, without a single blade of grass, just off Independence Avenue in central Accra, the capital of Ghana, young boys of 11 and 12 have met for a friendly football match on a Sunday afternoon. The sun is scorching and the ground hot. When the boys are playing, it is fine, says believer Mahama, 46, who watches the game from the sidelines. A shortwave radio tuned to a different game played between Chelsea and Manchester United, pinned to his ear. When they are young, he says, they play pure football. It's beautiful. We hope Mexico plays beautiful football. But we also hope they can somehow win. That sense of a man watching children play, with a technology linking him to a game in Europe, is a scene repeated from the beaches of Senegal to the favelas of Rio and Sao Paulo, to the parks in China and the streets of Guadalajara. The game, the simple game, the beautiful game, has become a global game. The final, which will be played in Berlin, will mark a new moment in world history, as more than 1 billion people will be watching the same images on television. How did this happen? Understanding how football has grown from its early beginnings in England, in fee-paying public schools of the 19th century, with their commitment to a muscular Christianity, tells us much about the modern world as studying other forms of global markets and geopolitics. At a meeting on October the 26th, 1863, at a pub in London, 13 laws of the game were established. Wherever the sons of empire and imperial commerce went, football went with them. In Latin America, it followed British merchants and railway builders. In Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. The World Cup seems to have allowed fans to find a soft nationalism that does not spill over into violent politics. If violence is to cease to be a man's game, we need to establish new rules for gender and sexual equality, new possibilities for transformation. And we've already been reminded how violence is often the response to the transformation of gender relations and the resistance on the part of men often of what they do not want to hear. Violence can be used as a means of silencing, a way of legitimating men's power in relationship to women, and also men's power in relationship to gay and queer identities. Violence becomes a way of closing down contact and communication. It becomes a defensive gesture that hurts intimate relationships. If violence is to cease to be a man's game, we need to establish new rules for gender and sexual equalities that allow for nourishing the dignity and self-worth of the next generation of girls and boys who can freely explore their own gendered and sexed identities with hope which will be less scarred by violence in their intimate contact. The next section, globalized violence, structural violence. After the attack on the Twin Towers in New York and the Pentagon in Washington on 9/11, the West was forced to rethink the relations of global structural violence. In America, they felt, how could they hate us so much when they were prepared to kill so many innocent people? The United States learnt that violence was not a game, or if it was a game, it was one that others could play too. Though the relatives of the survivors of the Twin Towers did not wish for revenge and appealed that a different response was necessary, we know that little was learnt, and that the response was to be overpowering military force, first in Afghanistan, and then in a decision to invade Iraq, against the expressed democratic wishes of so many who took to the streets in protest around the world, in England as in Mexico. We were not listened to, and the daily deaths of so many leave us feeling angry and ashamed. Violence is an instrument of revenge, both in global relations of power, against the humiliation as the US saw itself, and as an exercise in what was called shock and awe. Violence is not a game, and it's time for us to take responsibility for the ways Western culture framed dominant masculinities as independent and self-sufficient. Through reason split from emotions, knowledge separated from bodies,